Okay, a very, very big welcome to Pennine Ham Amateur Radio Club this evening. We're very, very pleased to have quite a few visitors from North America and some other parts of the UK as well joining us tonight, as well as our members and friends and supporters of Pennine Ham. Delighted that you're able to join us, and even more pleased that we've got Hiroki AH6CY here tonight as well to talk to us. As I was saying before we started the meeting properly tonight, I came across Hiroki's article in the March 2025 edition of Ragcom, and it was an article about a very simple antenna, but one that is one that a number of us have thought would make a good portable antenna, and it was a design of a 4-band portable delta loop antenna using 2 telescopic whips. And a number of us are already in possession of a number of these telescopic whips and use those for our portable operation as it is. But I thought the article was nice and interesting and simple, and it would be wonderful to get Hiroki to come along and talk to us about it tonight. So Hiroki, a very good evening to you and welcome to Pennine Ham.
Good evening and good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to give a talk to this group. I'm very happy to be able to share some of my experience, especially one of my most recent homebrewed antenna, which turned out to be a very good antenna, and I'll be happy to share anything you might be interested.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. When you agreed to talk, I did a bit of my homework on you, Hiroki, and the first thing I came across, and I've put it up on the screen here, is that you wrote a book in which was published. It's available through the RSGB. It's also available on Amazon Kindle, about the Paraset radio and the story of a World War II spy radio and how to build a working replica. Now, I haven't read the book yet. I'm sure I will do, but just tell me what drew your interest in that book, in that radio, Hiroki, and led you to write that book.
Well, it's actually a long story, but to just briefly, I came across the story of SOE spies during World War II some 20 years ago. And as I delved into the history of SOE agents, I discovered this one particular radio used to communicate from the field that is behind the Nazi line to the headquarters in the UK. And this radio is a very simple 3-tube, 3-valve, I guess, to our British friend, to 3-valve transceiver. And it was very simple, but it was able to produce CW signal up to about 4 or 5 watts, which was sufficient to communicate from countries like France, Norway, Denmark, and so forth to the UK. So, as I start really looking at the available information, it occurred to me this is something I can replicate. I happen to have a lot of parts in my junk box, some of them dating back to World War II. So I started building the Paraset, the replica, and as it turned out, I ended up building 3 different kind of Paraset radios, and I came across the community of Paraset builders, and thanks to the modern internet access, and to make a long story short, after I have done all kinds of replica buildings and doing research, I decided to put together my experience in a book. And RSGB was interested in publishing this book, so I worked on this for about half a year. And so it was finally published several years ago. Now, this book is available directly from RSGB, but for our non-UK friends, it's more accessible by the Amazon Kindle, the ebook form, and the RSGB headquarters people told me recently that this is the most popular ebook that has come out of the RSGB. But anyway, I'll stop there as far as the Parasite Radio goes.
Well, that takes me on to my next slide, Hiroki, which is you wrote an article in QST several years ago and the headline was "The Radios That Started and Ended World War II in the Pacific, an examination of the radios used during the attack on Pearl Harbor and the bombing of Hiroshima." Obviously, I read that article because I thought I know nothing about this really, so I was fascinated with the article. But I saw you've got obviously a direct personal interest in this that obviously spurred you on to look at this and research it. But I see, Hiroki, you were born in Hiroshima in the year that a month after the Pearl Harbor attack, and you were 3.5 years old, living just 20 miles away from Ground Zero, where the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima during the Second World War. So an extraordinary life history there, and even more extraordinary, I read in your article there that when you entered high school at the age of 12, the high school building was located less than 2 miles from where the bomb was dropped, and that's where you went to high school. So just tell us a bit about that, and then how it was that you then ended up coming across, I think, to Hawaii in the first instance, to the US.
Well, because of the background, which was just described by Nick, I was quite interested when I started getting interested in radio. I became immediately quite interested in researching the kind of communication equipment on board the B-29 bomber that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I started studying the history and start collecting all kinds of information when I retired from my work in 2020. And I visited the many museums and really researched the radio equipment used during World War II. Again, to make a long story short, I ended up acquiring the same model transmitter and receiver on board the Enola Gay. That's the nickname of the B-29 that dropped a bomb on my city in 1945. So I acquired this model, which was not functioning. So I spent some time restoring that particular radio. Actually, it consisted of the transmitter and the receiver, and I restored both of them. And I built a mock the radio room in my house, replicating the B-29 radio bay. And as my research got interested, I became very curious about what kind of radio the Pearl Harbor attack airplane, the bomber, used. And so this was a little bit difficult to collect because after World War II, when the General MacArthur and his military group occupied Japan, they ordered the destruction of all the wartime equipment, including the radios. And so there are only very few extant the World War II era radios in Japan and elsewhere. Well, this elsewhere included one particular California location, which was somebody's garage. And by totally the happenstance, I acquired when somebody called me and after answering my advertisement in the radio magazine that he owned the Japanese military radio, and he didn't know what he had, and of course I had no idea what he had, but I visited his garage. It so happened this is the same model radio transmitter which was on board the bomber that sent the well-known message "Tora Tora Tora" that we succeeded in the attack and we are on the way back. That was a message, encoded message contained in "Tora Tora Tora." So I acquired that radio, and naturally it was not functioning, but I managed to restore it. So this particular article that appeared in QST is the story of how I acquired these equipment and how I restored them and how they were used in the opening of the Pacific Theater of World War II, that is the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then the radio that ended the war, that is to say, the Enola Gay dropping the bomb on August 6, 1945. Another nuclear bomb was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. And 2 weeks later, on August 15th, Japan surrendered, and bringing the World War II to the end. So this is the reason why this article was titled "The Radios That Started and Ended World War II in the Pacific." I guess that's it for now about this radio.
Yeah, that's, Hiroki, it's fascinating. And I read in your article, I didn't know this, that the Enola Gay itself, the aircraft, has been restored, including the original radios that were inside it, and they are in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Virginia. So there's probably one or two of the visitors tonight who have probably seen it in the museum there, if they've travelled around. So yeah, I mean, I could see. What I immediately realised when I read your article and saw your own personal history, where you were born and lived at the time, why this became, along with your interest in radios, why this became such a great interest to you. Just before moving on, one of our members in the club tonight, Henry M0ZAE, holds two special calls in the UK. One is GB4 SOE and the other is GB6 SOE, and they're used occasionally in this country when there are special events that are talking about the role of the special services during the Second World War or on particular anniversaries. And I've got no doubt, I'm sure Henry will tell us later, that because it's the 80th anniversary this year of the ending of the Second World War, at least in Western Europe, on D-Day, and then subsequently the collapse of the German army and the end of the war in 1945. that I'm quite sure those call signs will be put to use at that time. So that's quite interesting. Hiroki, the next thing that I saw, and don't need you to talk about an awful lot about this at the moment, but I found interesting. You also wrote a really interesting article in QST about the history of the phonetic alphabet and its use in radio. And you gave various examples. I've got on the screen here, 3 tables: the original Abel Baker alphabet, the ARRL phonetic alphabet from 1948, and the ARRL phonetic alphabet from 1957. And of course, we've also now got the NATO alphabet that's used most commonly. But of course, everyone likes to use their own version of phonetics. But that was an interesting article as well. And I guess speech and phonetics and language have been a great interest for you as well, Hiroki.
Well, anybody who would be interested in reading this, if you read this, it's self-explanatory what this article is about. And so I wouldn't go into details here, but one interesting note is it just so happened one of my club members, that is Palo Alto Radio Association's club member, happened to be the original creator of this phonetic alphabet, which is now commonly used among not only the amateur radio service, but the civil aviation and in some cases, some police stations. It was based, the current set of the phonetic alphabet used, that is to say, Alpha, Baker, Charlie, etc., were very, very carefully, these alphabets were carefully chosen to maximize the communicability through the voice. And obviously it is adopted internationally, and the ICAO, International, what's the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is part of the United Nations organizations, adopted this, and it is universally used by pilots around the world. But there is actually a very deeply researched reason why all these phonetic alphabet were chosen. Historically, there have been a number of other phonetic alphabet table, and I wouldn't go into detail, but as I said, if you are interested in reading this article, is quite self-explanatory.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I found that fascinating. It's interesting to see, isn't it, the influence that amateur radio and amateur radio activists have had on things that are still in use by all kinds of organisations today, that no one knows the history comes from amateur radio hams somewhere devising these things. So that I agree with you. It's an article definitely worth looking up. Hiroki, I'm going to take us on to where we started really, and this is just a screenshot of the first page of the article. So my apologies to everybody, just because of the size of the PowerPoint screen and the orientation of the pictures, slightly cut off here, but we can get you, if anyone isn't a member of Radcom and wants a screenshot of the entire page, we can do that, and I can send you decent copies of it. But on the screen, I've put a copy of your portable Delta Loop antenna and the dimensions beneath and how you built it. Can I just hand over to you and let you just talk us through how you started with this and how you got on? And obviously I've got the second page as well. So over to you, Hiroki.
Okay. I have lived in the highly antenna restricted community. It's kind of ironic that I live in the heart of Silicon Valley, where all kinds of electronic experiments are conducted for research and profit. But the many communities within the Silicon Valley have a very severe antenna restrictions. And so I have lived at this particular QTH for the past 25 years. So the majority of my on-the-air activities have been outdoors. And luckily, I live in Northern California, where climate is mild and there are more sunny days than not. And so this is, sorry, so it is a great cute location for all kinds of outdoor activities, including ham radio. So as a result of having to operate outdoors mostly, that I have experimented with all kinds of antennas, end-fed, half-wave, vertical of all kinds, short and long vertical antennas, and magnetic loop antenna, and finally this loop antenna, delta loop antenna. This is a full wave size antenna. And of all the antennas I have built in the past 25 years or so, this antenna turns out to be the most efficient antenna. It is not the easiest antenna to build, but it is by far the most efficient antenna, and I've been very pleased with its performance. I built this in October last year, so I have been using this nearly half a year. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that interruption. Let's see. Because of its wait, there's a persistent call here. When you think about the portable antenna, that's something you can carry to the field and put that together and so that you can get on the air. One doesn't usually think about the Yagi antenna or the loop antenna, because they happen to be very big, and it is very difficult to construct and to erect in the field. However, there are well-known advantages in the Yagi antennas and the loop antennas. Well, let's focus on the loop antenna. Loop antenna, full wave size loop antenna, is, as the word indicates, is the full length of whatever meter band you operate. So if you want to construct a 20-meter, the antenna for the 20 meters, the circumference has to be about 20 meters, which is about 60 plus feet for the to be a full-size loop. Now that's pretty big. However, the advantage is this: the full-size loop antenna is the equivalent of 2 stacked dipole antenna, or you might say two element, equivalent to two element Yagis. If you can visualize the connecting the end of the two element Yagi or the two dipoles, and the squash it to build the loop, either quad or the triangular, you can see what I'm talking about. In theory, it is the duplicating of the two stacked dipole antenna and or the two element dipole, two element Yagi. As such, it has a pretty good gain over a dipole antenna or the vertical antenna. Now, the advantage of gain is obviously obvious. Now, interestingly, if you construct a 20-meter loop antenna, which is about 20 meters circumference, or it is not only good for the 20-meter band, but also it's good for 10-meter band. In fact, as a 10-meter band antenna, it is the equivalent of 4 stacked dipole antenna when you think about it. And as such, it is a very, very effective 10-meter antenna as well. The same length, same loop antenna works for 10 meters and 20 meters. And 20 meters is a much superior antenna than to the 20 meters. Now, continuing with some advantages of a loop antenna, the delta loop has a very low angle radiation pattern if you erect it vertically, as you see in the photos. So the radiation patterns are bidirectional, that is to the plane, direction of the plane. So it has the directivity, and just as a two-element Yagi would have it. And it makes a very good DX antenna. And then another interesting characteristic of the loop antenna, and this is true with any full-size wire antenna, it is a pretty broad-banded. In other words, if you tune the loop antenna to a certain frequency, usable bandwidth could be as much as 200 kilohertz. So depending on which band you construct the loop antenna, you may not need antenna tuner. So it is a broadband, the HF antenna. And another advantage is that it is a very quiet antenna. This is true with any closed loop antenna, including the magnetic loop or the folded dipole antenna. And so there's that additional advantage. And lastly, you don't need the radial wires as you would if you want to use the vertical antenna of any kind. And if I have time later, I'll mention some of the vertical antenna I built and experimented with the different kind of radial wires and such. Now, moving on to the construction details, as mentioned, this antenna I built used the telescopic fiberglass antenna. There are, of course, the ferrite. Let's see. Different kind of telescopic antennas, and what you need to avoid is the what do you call that? Fiber.
Carbon fiber.
Carbon, yes, thank you. Carbon fiber antenna cannot be used because it has some conductivity and it interferes with the radiation patterns. So what you need to use is the fiberglass telescopic pole. Now, fiberglass telescopic poles are available probably in the US dollars, anywhere from $100 to $200 a piece for 30 feet or 10 meter height. And but somebody told me that if you can go to some of the vendors, to the Chinese vendors, you may be able to acquire even less expensively. But be that as it may, the telescopic fiberglass poles are bendable, as you see in the photos. And this bend offers a very nice spring motion. It keeps the tension if you connect the two tops with wire, as you see for the 20-meter band. And now for the to nest the other antenna wires for the other bands, 18 meters and 50 meters, 70 meters, 50 meters. You need to nest these wires inside the loop, and the way I did it was to use bungee cords and the plastic carabiners. Do not use the metal carabiners, which is far more easily available. But if you look in the internet market, there are many sizes and many kinds of the carabiners, and that's a very nice piece of equipment you can use. Now, I had to experiment with the various lengths and the tension of the bungee cords to suspend the two additional wires inside. Now, I haven't mentioned the 12 meters and the, but naturally you can add another wire and make it the sort of a 5 bands instead of 4 bands as I constructed. Now, at the bottom, all these wires are connected. For either side, and this ends with about 100 ohm, and which is too high for the most of the transceivers we use. So you have to bring the 100 ohm to 50 ohm, which is the usual impedance the most transceivers use today. So I built my own balun, 2-to-1 balun, and which is not as difficult as it may sound. you just have to get the right size, the ferrite core, and then the magnetic wire, and you can see the construction details. Now, I did note the approximate length of wires used for each band, but depending on your own, your particular case of the telescopic antenna and where you put them up, and so put it up, you need to experiment to find the right length of wires. And so initially when you are constructing these antennas, you make wires a little longer than the calculations would indicate, and you start trimming them, and you can trim it little by little until you obtain the ideal, the lowest SWR. Now, as you see in the photos, which is on the second page here, we see here, I use the nano VNA to measure them, and you can get the pretty good SWR in all the bands. Now, I did not include the photos for 10 meters. 10 meter is indicates an equally low SWR. So as you can imagine, when you get the pretty broadband, low SWR, you don't really need the antenna tuners with your transceivers. Your transceivers may have some built-in antenna tuners, and if so, of course, you should use them to bring it to really lowest. I didn't get exactly 1-to-1, these PSWR 1-to-1 in any of these bands, but it's low enough, close to somewhere between 1 and 2 in most areas of each band. Now, performance, as I mentioned earlier, this is the best antenna I have ever built for portable use. And I am thinking of somehow building the 2-element delta loop mounted on my vehicle, but that's a tall order of design work. So I don't know whether I will ever succeed, but that's my next goal. Okay, I think I've talked enough about this antenna, and I'm ready to entertain questions.
Hiroki, just before you do, just tell us a couple of words about the performance. In the Radcom article, you said that you were using the IC705, which with an external battery will give you 10 watts of output on single sideband. What kind of range of contacts were you able to make running 10 watts into this antenna?
From California, I have no problem of getting most of the, I can cover most of the North American continent with 10 watts. And of course, when the band is not dead, that is. But also, I have routinely worked the Asia from the location where I get together with my QRP buddies every Friday afternoon, JAs, VKs, and also when I put the loop antenna directed toward the Asia, the backside, as I said, loop antenna is the bidirectional, backside faces the South America. So I have also been able to talk with the many South American stations, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Chile, and so forth. Now, Europe is a little more challenging from my location in California, but I have had the contact with the European stations, not with 10 watts, but I also have the 50 watts homebrew linear amp. So when I turn on the 50 watts linear amp, it helps to get to the European stations, of course, when the band is open.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think everyone was waiting to hear from you about performance, and I'm quite sure in the discussion now, Hiroki, one of our members, Ken G4VZV, has been operating from home with a homemade Delta Loop, single band Delta Loop, and having marvelous results with it. So I'm sure he'll tell us about that as well. But thank you very much. It's a great article. I've got just one question to you that occurred to me about building this antenna, that instead of putting and constructing a balun, about running the feed from the antenna as twin feeder into the back of an ATU with a balun built inside it, so that you're matching through to the open feeder rather than coax cable. I wonder if you had a play at doing that, or did you do it exclusively using 50 ohm coax?
I have actually, indeed I have. I have used home-built ladder lines, and it works just as well. It works very well. However, for my purpose, the ladder antenna gets rather difficult that get entangled in when I try to carry it, and so for very practical reasons, I did not continue use ladder line. Many people tell me ladder is more efficient than 2-to-1 balun plus the coax feed. It obviously, at least in theory, it has a much less loss than the coax. But as I said, for practical reasons, I did not continue to use ladder line.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Very, I mean, interesting answer there. Okay, shall we just take a pause in terms of where we're going to go? Because I've got other things to put to Hiroki, but let's just open it up to discussion. Would anyone like to ask a question or make a comment on anything really that Hiroki's talked about tonight? If you want to go, can you either, if you're watching on a computer of some sort or even on a tablet, there's a button named React, and if you click on that, there's one to raise your hand. That's quite helpful. Or if you can't find that, just wave your hand at me and I'll call you in to ask a question or make a comment, or even unmute yourself and I'll try and call you in then. So who would like to go first? Yes, I've got Steve.
Oh, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Steve, AA4BW, near Atlanta, Georgia. And what a fascinating program. I wondered, Hiroki, if you could talk a little bit more about the telescoping poles that you used on the antenna, please, sir.
Okay, the particular telescopic antenna I used was sold by Pactenna, 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 and I believe they are still offering the telescopic antenna. They sell both the fiberglass and the other kind too. So make sure you get the fiberglass.
Thank you very much.
And there are other vendors. I cannot immediately recall the names, but if you put the if you do the Google search, there are several other vendors in the US. And also, as I mentioned, you may be able to obtain cheaper products from Chinese sources.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to Hiroki's answer to you, Steve, on that. Personally, if I was building this antenna, and I probably will, I wouldn't go for one of the very heavy-duty fiberglass poles. So, for example, Spiderbeam in the US, and they're on sale in Europe as well, make a very, very good quality fiberglass pole that is much more rigid than the normal cheaper fishing pole type that are sold on eBay or through the Chinese vendors. And I think for the purpose of this antenna, and looking at the photograph of it bent round, pulled together with the cable at the top, I think that the lighter poles might not be as long lasting, but actually would be better than the heavy duty ones. And I know as well DX Commander in the UK are now selling their poles through DX Engineering, and they've got poles of a similar rigidity to the Spiderbeam ones. They're quite heavy duty, they're very thick poles at the bottom, so the amount of bend in them isn't that much, and that's why both Spiderbeam and DX Commander are using those poles for vertical antennas, because they've got greater rigidity. Even when there's a lot of wind blowing on them, they don't sway quite as much. But my guess is, and Hiroki, correct me if I'm wrong about this, I think you want fiberglass poles that have actually got some movement in them to make the shape that you've got in the photograph we were looking at a bit earlier. If I just bring it back on the screen, whoops, that one. If you had very rigid poles, you would struggle to get that shape.
I would think so. I haven't used the rigid kind, so I cannot confidently respond to that question. But I would imagine that if you don't have any bend, it has to be able to bend. If it's too rigid, probably it's difficult to get the kind of tension I have obtained.
Yeah, so Steve, I'll give you an example. As a portable operator, if I go out into the field taking one of the very cheap fiberglass poles, maybe an 8-meter pole or a 10-meter pole, Henry M0ZE is just posted into the chat some examples of them sold by a company called Sotabeams, which is an amateur radio company in the UK. Their poles aren't as rigid. And the problem you'll find is when I first tried to use one of the thinner poles, the 8-meter or 10-meter ones, and use it as a support for a dipole or an inverted V dipole, the top elements of the pole. So if you look on the screen here in front of us now, let me just put my cursor on it. When you look up the screen, you will see that this is quite bent over at the top and coming together at the top. What you'll find with the cheaper poles sold by companies like Sotabeams, they're very good for this type of antenna, but very poor for supporting something like a dipole, because they immediately droop right over. So instead of the apex, the top of your inverted B being at the 10 meters you thought it was going to be, because the top elements of the pole are so thin, you're probably only 6 or 7 meters off the ground because the whole thing is bent over. That's what I found with them. So I think those type of poles that Hiroki is describing would be better to go for that type rather than the heavy duty ones. And they're cheaper as well. So the good thing for us radio hams, both in the US and in the UK and Europe, the thinner poles are cheaper. And we all like that. Thanks, Steve. And Steve, just before you disappear off the screen here, for our members here in Pennine Ham who are going up to the Blackpool Rally, you're coming over to Blackpool, aren't you? So we're going to see you there. You're on mute at the
Yes,
moment.
there we go. Yes, we're looking forward to it. My wife and I are going to be in the Lake District for a couple of weeks in April, and it just so happens that the Blackpool Rally, or Hamfest, as I would say here at home, is on my birthday, right in the middle of our trip. So we're looking forward to that. And my wife, although she's not a ham, she said she'll drop me off and she'll go shopping. So so I'm looking forward to getting to meet some of you all here in a few weeks.
All right, lovely, Steve. Yeah, we'll see you next month. That's great. All
Thank you
right,
so much.
I've got Ken with his hand up. Ken, EA5 stroke G4VZV. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hiroki, thank you very much for all the information there and going right from the history as well. Right, there is no finer antenna than a closed loop. And you've said it all, be it a delta loop, a cubical quad, or a magnetic loop, and I've got all three. Another good point that you didn't mention, Hiroki, but if I can just mention it, is when you put this antenna up, you're beaming, and I use the word beaming in inverted commas, both short path and long path at the same time. So if there is a question over the propagation, then you are in straight away with your long and short path, whereas someone with a big 3-element or a 5 or 6-element beam has got to turn his antenna. So that's another advantage. I would say Nick raised a fantastic point about the telescopic fiberglass poles. And yes, I think you've got to get maybe the pole that's slightly longer. So for your antenna, I would be looking at 9-meter length poles to allow for that bending. The antenna that I've had up recently is a delta loop, slightly smaller, by Mike 0 Papa Lima Kilo. And he used a vertical feed line that came from the top horizontal wire. A fantastic antenna, but I do believe that the full-sized, as you've got like monoband version, is better. You get a good 5S points null off the side of that antenna. So in England, if you're pointing northeast, southwest, you'll null the Italians out almost down to 0. Fabulous antenna. I read this article and I just thought, wow. What can you say? I have taken my delta loop down at the moment and replaced it with a cubical quad in the shape of a square, and put all the other loops up inside the spreaders. The first station I worked with both antennas were in the Pacific, Foxtrot Kilowatt 4, on the first call with 100 watts. These antennas, for the cheapness and the fact that you build them yourself, absolutely nothing can touch it unless it's a 2 or a 3-element cubical quad or a 10-element Yagi. And that's all I've got to say about it. If you've got the space to build one at home, build one. For outdoors in the open, then yeah, I would think you'll work the world easily on low power. So there's my thoughts on that one.
Hiroki, over to you on your comments on Ken there.
Well, that was a very nice comment, and I agree with everything you said. Yes, a cubical quad, 2-element cubical quad performs, I know from my past experience, is as good as 4-element Yagi. And again, it stands to the reason when I was earlier talking about, in theory at least, each element of a full-size loop is equal to 2 elements of Yagi, or 2 stacked dipole. And the interesting comment you made that it's a bidirectional quality. I haven't thought about the long path. You can monitor both long path and short path at the same time. That's a wonderful consideration. Although I have never worked any long path with this antenna, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Ken, for your observations on that. Ken, go on. Do you want one last comment before I move on?
No, I fully understand what Hiroki's saying, and yeah, just yeah, if you can build one, all closed loops are so quiet. Back home, my my noise level is not even moving the S meter, and at the very most, it's S1. And you can hear stations that you can't hear on vertical antennas, and sometimes, you know, other sort of mini beams, that sort of thing. If you put up something like this, you're spoiled, because you'll never go back to other basic Yagi type beams. And the reason why I've done it is because I've got power lines very close to my house, only 6 or 8 meters away, and it doesn't even pick up the noise from those power lines. So that's it. Yeah, back to you, Nick.
Thank you, Ken. I've got Jeff, ON8NC. Jeff, go ahead. Jeff, you've got no audio at the moment. Still no audio. We got. While Jeff's looking to try and sort his audio out, have we got anyone else who wants to put a question while Jeff just gets himself sorted? Yeah, Roger, G4UFZ. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And thanks, Hiroki. Very interesting. First of all, the use of the VNA, the nano VNA. Fantastic bit of kit. I love my nano VNAs. They're getting the visual representation when you're tuning an antenna. It makes it so easy. And so much easier than just getting a reading. So I just want to say thank you for promoting that. I wonder, when you're tuning the multi-element, the fact that you've got multi-bands there, do you get interaction when you're tuning one and shortening one, lengthening one, whatever? Do you get interaction with the other bands much on that antenna?
Yes, you do. However, it's interaction is very minimal, and I had to make. I did make the adjustment little bit by little bit, but to my surprise, I expected that quite a bit of interaction, but the interaction was not a major issue. Essentially, even if you don't actually, by the way, when I was constructing it, I constructed each wire separately first before I put them together, and it took me a very small amount of adjustment to tune it to the frequency I wanted. So interaction is minimal.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I wondered, that's I've done fan dipoles, but because of the circularity, I wondered if there was a greater interaction, but it's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Right, back to Jeff, ON8NC. We got you now, Jeff?
Okay, do you hear me, Nick?
We do. 5
okay.
and 9.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Hiroki, for a very, very good talk, very interesting. And I have some little questions about it, actually. These telescopic pools, how long are they exactly? That's the first question. And then the second question is the wind resistance. I could imagine if you erect that I hope you're not doing this totally alone. I hope you have someone to help you, because that seems to be a monster. So how do you erect that, and the wind resistance, and how much time does that take to erect that antenna? Thank you.
Okay, well, how long the pole is? I used a 10-meter pole, but
Wow.
I didn't use all of the 10-meter length. I did not use a very top section, so it was up. In effect, I was using only 9 meters.
Okay.
So in the U.S., of course, it's a 30 feet pole.
Yeah.
I bought it as a 30 feet pole, but it is essentially about 27 feet. That's how long it is. Now, as far as the erecting this antenna, I do it all by myself.
Wow.
Every piece I can handle it by myself. It takes me about 20 minutes to erect this in the field. Now, I did not talk about the mounting, the support. I repurposed the bicycle carrier, which is attached to the hinge in the back of my SUV. And you don't see the bottom of it, but this bicycle mount can be tilted. So you can make it to L shape. So essentially I built I put together the loop antenna in the field flat, and then I push it up to 90 degrees. So if you need to look for, perhaps you'd need to look for the appropriate kind of a bicycle mount if you're going to do it with a bicycle mount. And there are such things, a bicycle mount which can bend the 70 to 90 degrees flat, and then you can lift it.
Brilliant idea.
The telescopic pole itself is very light, and you can do it all by yourself to extend it. So this can be done all by oneself.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a brilliant idea about this bicycle thing. Very, very good. Thank you very much, Hiroki.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Right, I've got Henry, M0ZAE. Over to you, Henry.
Yeah, thanks for the ideas there. Really good. We tried something similar a couple of decades ago. The original idea came from a company called ProWhips here in the UK. They did something similar to that. Not the spit in the center, that's an interesting idea there to try. But we had the wire going around all of the whole length of the poles, up the poles, across to the other side, down the poles again. And as Hiroki said, putting it up was easy. Trying to get it to match and tune up nicely was a nightmare, and varied according to where we actually put it up. And we planted it on a simple piece of angle iron hammered into the ground. Worked well, that, but the tuning was a bit of a thing. But it was before the days of nano VNAs and things like that. So it was pretty much a suck it and see approach, which didn't really work that well when you're rushing for a field day. Thanks.
Thanks, Henry. Okay, anyone else got a question or comment they want to put to Hiroki about this antenna? For those that aren't members of the RSGB, I'm sure they won't mind because it's good advertising for Ragcom. But if you email me at g4iwo@btinternet.com or email pennineham at pennineham, all one word, 2024 @gmail.com, either one of those two email addresses, I will send you a copy of the article, and I'm sure the RSGB will be happy for me to do it because it's good advertising for the RSGB. Always want more members like the ARRL. Okay, anyone else before I move on a bit with Hiroki to one or two other things he mentioned in his talk there?
Nick, could I just mention about the polls?
Yes, do, yeah.
I've had to buy some additional poles because eventually they do weather, and with all the rain and the sun, eventually they do start to deteriorate, i.e. they start to crack slightly, and then they become weak. I don't know what it's like in California, but we have such varied weather. So what I've noticed is that if you get a cloth with some petroleum jelly on the cloth, we call it another name, Vaseline, and just rub the cloth along the spreader and coat the spreader, it will protect it for a very long time without them being weathered. So just a thought about how to preserve. Well, that is also important for any antenna with those spreaders, whether it be a vertical or this antenna. So just thought I would mention that as well.
Okay, thank you. Hiroki, before we move on, we've got Robin, and I've got a question to you. Robin, you go ahead, please.
I can unmute myself. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Hiroki, for your talk. Where I live, I think at times the wind might be a bit too much for the Delta loop, but really interesting. Thank you very much for that. What I'd like to sort of just say, very interesting when Nick put up the first slides, and I'll be looking for the book on the Paraset radio. I'm a valve chap, and I love restoring old equipment, and I'd be very interested in looking and trying to make one of these sets. I've got on my workbench just now an American, an RME-69 valve shortwave receiver, I think made 1935 to 1938 in Illinois. I've got that on my bench just now, and gradually we'll work through it, restoring it. So yeah, very interested. I've always been very interested in the wartime equipment. So I'll be looking you up about that. And thanks very much to you and also Nick for bringing that up. So thank you, Hiroki, and I'll let you get on, Nick.
Okay,
thank you, and have fun.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I was just going to say to you, Hiroki, and I think the way you've put the antenna up was a question I'd posed to our member Ken a few weeks ago on his Delta loop, because Ken was putting his Delta loop at the top of his mast. I think Ken's got a 30-foot mast, and he was putting it at the top of the 30-foot. And I was saying to Ken, I wondered how it was going to operate if it was lower to the ground. And in a way, Hiroki, you've answered the question. You've discovered that you get a nice low angle of radiation from your antenna, even though you may only have the base of your loop antenna, the bottom of it, perhaps only 6 feet off the ground, as far as I can see from your picture there. So do you think that you can, it operates perfectly comfortably there? You don't need to put it at the top of a mast. Is that your view, that it does work very well close to the ground?
I would imagine so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, thank you very much, and thank you everyone to questions on that. And as I say, happy to help people trying to build it. And thank as well for people in the comments. Steve, I know in America there, LA4BW, posted in the chat a place in the US where you can buy the poles, and he was suggesting the same as Hiroki suggested, and a number of us have done with these poles, is just to turn them upside down, take the bottom off, and drop out the top few sections of the pole. Just use the very, very thin ones, because there is a danger with the very thin poles in the last section that they'll snap if they're pulled too tight together at the top. So that's probably a good idea. But I think Robin is right as well, by the way, Hiroki. Those of us well, Robin lives up in the top of Scotland. Yeah, and John O'Groats right on the north top part of Scotland in this country, and he has very high winds there. A number of us are in the Pennine Hills in the north of England, and I can tell you, when I go out working portable, as I did last week with my 15-foot telescopic steel whip, even with guys, the wind was blowing it right over. So my antenna was bent over like that in the wind, and unfortunately, when I tried to guy it, the wind kept moving direction. So I thought I'd cracked it, and it was vertical. And 5 minutes later, I looked up, and the wind had changed direction, and the antenna was blowing the other way. So I can see, and we'll no doubt build one, Hiroki, for one of our field day operations this year when we go out playing radio in the countryside in a few weeks' time. And we'll probably build one of these antennas and give it a go. Your Delta Loop antenna in your design here, kind of low to the ground. But I suspect we might find a little bit of a struggle if there's any wind, if we're in any reasonably high location. But we'll tell you how we get on. We'll send you some photographs and video of the fun we have with it.
I look forward to seeing them. Fortunately, in my area, there isn't a strong wind. It's not like Scotland, and so I have not experienced the very strong wind, which could break the antenna. But so I look forward to hearing your experience.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll sure be able to produce a video of us putting it up and trying it out. Okay, I want to just move on to Hiroki. When you and I were talking last few days, last week, you talked about where you lived, and I then discovered what you were telling me about your metal railings surrounding the second floor of your house, and how you had loaded this up as an antenna. And then when I was searching QST, I found that actually you had written to them about it and sent them a diagram of it. So just talk us through what you've done on your balcony there, Hiroki.
Okay, well, as I mentioned very early on, I live in highly antenna restricted area, and so I have experience with various kind of stealth antenna, which cannot be seen by the neighbors. And one day it occurred to me I could use the metal railing which surround my second floor deck. And so you can see the diagram there, which is altogether, you can see about close to 90 feet and about 30 meter long, L-shaped the railings. So I terminated it with a 9-to-1 balun, and at the bottom I have radial wires, and as it turned out, I can tune this from 160 meter to 6 meter with the help of the MFJ's antenna tuner. And I usually run 100 watts, but actually I have tried to put in 500 watts, and it didn't start a fire. So, but I don't run the 500 watt regularly. but I can tune from 160 to 6 meter, and I can put 100 watts. And of course, this is not a very efficient antenna, but my claim to fame is simply that I can load all the bands. I'm sorry, it's 5 to 2 o'clock p.m. for me, and I would need to cut this short. I have a doctor's appointment at 2 o'clock on Zoom, so
All right,
I have
Hiroki.
just a few minutes left. So if you have any quick comment or questions.
Hiroki, let me just put up a couple of other pictures that you posted into QST. One was an enclosure. You talked about your grandkids, and you
Right.
said that they played with what you called erector. In England and United Kingdom, we had a similar called Meccano, metal plates with holes in and screws and nuts. So that's what you've got here. You put a radio into one of those, which I thought was very sweet. You made a Morse key out of the same stuff, which is great. And you also told me that you love drinking coffee. So you decided to make a 15-meter vertical antenna by soldering a pile of the empty toffee cans together, coffee cans together, to make the vertical antenna. And there's you using it. Looks to me like you're down the beach there, using the coffee cans soldered together, and with a few radials obviously underneath it. So you clearly are someone, Hiroki, that loves playing. You also produced a vertical antenna, a 3-band center-loaded vertical with remote band switching, which you've got fitted to the back of your car on that same bicycle rack. I see no bicycles in sight ever, but just antennas. So that's great. And what was the last thing I found? This delighted me, that you produced a QRPP transceiver, so very, very low power, powered by a potato. Taking the potential difference in a potato to provide the power for this transmitter. So well done to you, Hiroki. It's been wonderful to have you. Don't hold you up from your doctor's appointments. So let me just give you the final word and just say thank you on behalf of everyone for a really, really entertaining evening. Hiroki.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I enjoyed talking to you. And if anybody has any further questions, you can email me with the AH6CY at pacbell, that's PACBELL.net. AH6CY at pacbell.net. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Hiroki. Can we show our appreciation to Hiroki in the normal way, everyone? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll meet again, I'm quite sure. Thank you for coming along tonight.
All right. Bye.
And thank you to our viewers on YouTube, and thank you as well to those who've been watching our video. We will be staying behind for a bit of a chat between those in the room, but I'd like to congratulate Hiroki for the work he's done and his contribution to amateur radio and his contribution to our meeting this evening. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.